Okay. Welcome. I think I'm going to start the meeting. This is Georgine Adams, the Chair of the Environmental Management Commission, holding meeting July 28th, 2021. And I'll go through the commissioners list by district, just to verify we've got enough people here. From District 1, John Burns. Wave, John.
Yeah, present.
Elise Robinson from District 2.
I am here.
Carrie Hopi'i is out today from District 3. I'm not seeing John Olson. Are you there from District 4? I'll see if John joins us later. District 5 is Melissa Cardwell. She is also not going to be joining us today. District 6, Lee McIntosh.
Here.
Sorry, good. District 7, Dee Fulton. Great. District 8, Rick Gaffney.
Here.
And I represent District 9, Georgine Adams. So we hereby have a quorum and we'll proceed with the meeting. We, as you may have noticed, we didn't have a meeting last month for assorted reasons, and we basically carried on topics, but we have a much more fulsome report from the director, and I'm sure some interesting conversations will occur. I will note that we have a substitute for Malia Hall, our counsel, and that is Jay Yoshimoto. And as a result, we will not be having the training on administrative hearings. This meeting, we'll put it off till next meeting. But since we have some interest in getting sooner rather than later to the director's report, I'm going to swap the director's report with the new business so that our public attendees can hang in there. Although with the training put off, the meeting may not be quite as long as it was going to be. So moving to the first order of business, can I get a motion to approve the minutes from May 26th, 2021?
I move that we approve the minutes from May 26, 2021.
Okay.
This is Elise.
I get a
Second.
The second from Rick. Thank you. Any discussion, corrections on the minutes? It was a yeoman's job, Peter. That was a long meeting. Hearing no requests for changes, can I have a vote for approval? I'll say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Aye. Any nays? Hearing no no's. I'll approve the minutes of May 26th. Statement from the chair, basically, hope you're having a good summer. We appreciate the input we've gotten from the public and want to continue to encourage participation, but also to have a general practice of looking for solutions and being positive, being constructive in the comments that are made. I think we're all struggling with how do we get done what we need to get done with the resources that we've got available to us. And it helps if we can work together on that. Moving to public statements. I understand we had request from Sandra Demerol. Are you on the line? Hello, you're muted.
Thank you, Chairman. Would you like me to speak now?
Well, I also want to find out, is there anyone else? Is Jerome there with you?
Yes, he's with me this morning.
And does he have comments as well?
Yes, he does. Yes, ma'am.
Okay. And would you like to make your comments now or when the subject matter comes up?
We'd like to make our comments now, please.
Okay, great. Sandra Demerol, we did carry over your submissions, written submissions for testimony from last meeting into our packet for this meeting. So we do have all the documentation, I think, that you provided. So go ahead, Sandra, and take 3 minutes to highlight your comments.
I'm Sandra Demerel in Nalehu, and I'm addressing this time agenda item 7.2C about the Pahala LCC closure project. Good morning, Chairman Adams and Commissioners. According to page 5 of the Director's Report, the county has made major changes to the Pahala project plans, from going from a technology of open lagoons for disposal to mechanized treatment alternatives with subsurface drip irrigation. This major change of plan requires the mayor, who was the accepting authority, to consider whether a supplemental environmental assessment is needed and to publish notice of that decision in 10, the Office of Environmental Quality, the magazine, the monthly, bi-monthly publication. I've attached a sample of the notice that is required by this major change, so you can see for yourselves what I'm talking about. On the Director's Report on page 5, the county has said that the EPA is making a decision. But EPA has its own set of rules. They're federal rules. And NEPA is what it's called, the National Environmental Policy Act. And in my opinion, and the opinion of many legal scholars, NEPA is just not as strict as HEPA is. Our Hawaiian environmental laws are stricter. So this presents a golden opportunity to us all, the public and to the county, to do a new environmental assessment to consider the strip alternative in this 25 acres of old growth macadamia nut orchard. Instead of pulling up the mature 20-foot trees, we could just do drip underneath the ground and not have to disturb the plants that are already there. So I see this as a golden opportunity to once again look at things with new eyes, and just as the county does. So thank you for considering my concerns about the need for a new environmental assessment or a supplement of some sort, or at least publication of whether they're going to do one or not. So thank you, and now I'll hand it over to Jerry. Thank you.
I'm Jerome Warren in Na'alehu. In regard to the Na'alehu sewer update, this is agenda item 7C, and it's on the Director's Wastewater 4 1B on page 6. The Na'alehu sewer project deadline is 2023. Your information report says 2027, and this happened last month too. So to get the truth, you must look at the EPA website. There you will find the semi-annual update that the county submits to the EPA. This report is not on the county website. The report is not signed by the director. Please take this item out of order. Let's hear it first. Don't let the clock run down and have this boondoggle glossed over again. I am in contact with the EPA and will answer any questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Jerome, for your comments. And I think we will be discussing both Pahala and Na'alehu during the director's report. It's a big chunk of that. And hopefully we can get some of your questions addressed there. Are there any other requests for public testimony? Okay, hearing none. We'll move on to item 5, unfinished business. Rather than going around to everybody, could I get people to raise their hand, either with a little symbol or wave, whether you have any updates on the priorities that you are working on? Rick Gaffney, and then I'll follow with Dee. And if anybody else wants to speak, great.
Yeah, just a couple of quick notes that the projects that I've described before are ongoing. The process to sewer Honoka'a Harbor is moving forward into the planning stage. There's a lot to understand and a lot to learn in the process, and one of the problems that we've faced is that there is not currently a connection from Kealakekee Parkway at Honoka'a Harbor to the wastewater treatment plant. And Ramsey has been has had several meetings with other developers besides the harbor, and including us in those discussions to try to see if that can be moved forward. But it's like everything else in the work that we do, it's extraordinarily complicated, and timing is important. The developers, of course, need to be able to sell their land, but they can't sell their land until they provide the sewage services required. So there's lots of pieces to the puzzle is what I'm learning. So, but the good news is I think it's continuing to move forward, and Harbors Division DLNR continues to be focused on getting it done. The other two things I've been involved with since the last meeting is one is there are 2 major fish processors on this island, and they've come together and provided the opportunity to provide the equipment even to do processing of their fish waste, and then working with the county or with one of the county's contractors toward turning our mulch into really high nutrient compost. So those discussions have just started, but basically one of the larger fish processors is actually willing to provide the equipment, the screw press, the drying bins, and so forth, to move that process forward. So there are discussions going on as to where that will take place. And then, of course, there's permitting issues and all kinds of things that'll slow it down. You know, unfortunately, there's about 50,000 pounds a month of fish waste available on this island. But until all the permits are in place and all the agreements are in place and memorandums of understanding and all of that sort of thing, that fish waste will continue to be wasted. So the third thing I just wanted to report in on was new to me, but I learned, you've probably heard that the state of Maine and Oregon have passed extended producer responsibility bills, which basically puts a price on plastic before it becomes a cost issue for the citizens of the community. And essentially it's similar to the fees put on things like tires and batteries and stuff like that we know we're going to have to sell. So I reached out to the councilman for District 8, Hawai'i Inaba, and asked whether or not there was something the county council could do to support that process in the state. And in the course of doing that, he reached out to Rep. Lowen, and unbeknownst to me, she has been introducing bills of this nature in the legislature for 2 years. They haven't moved forward yet, but she's a member of the National Caucus of Environmental Legislators. So she's actively working with legislators from Maine and Oregon and Washington State and California toward this end. So the good news is there is actually some progress on this subject. And if you're interested in supporting that, I would reach out to your legislators, Big Island delegation. And I believe the council is going to be hearing more about this as we move forward. So that's my report.
Rick, do you think that there's opportunity to put that on the agenda, maybe for next meeting, to talk about it? And personally, I wouldn't like to learn more about what the additional challenges are to this island state. But and kind of leaning toward, well, let Maine work out all the bugs that are going to come up on this process. But we could agendize it and get a little bit more information presented at next meeting or the one following.
Yeah, I think probably we should ask Rep. Lowen to do a presentation because she's spearheading this. She's the head of the House Environmental Committee. And because she's working with the National Caucus, she's going to be able to answer more questions than anybody else I'm aware of. So I think that would be the ideal thing, is to invite her to make a presentation at the next meeting.
Do others think that's a good idea? And Rick and I can explore that and see what we could line up either for the August or September meeting. Why don't we do that? I'll put that on the agenda for follow-up.
Yeah, it's good timing too. If we need to catch her before, probably August meeting is better because she goes back into session late in the year, and by September they're working in their legislative offices and working toward the legislation for the next session. So I think we should invite her right away.
Okay, and it also be relevant when we have our discussion, new business discussion on funding for solid waste as an opportunity. So good info all around. And I also had the question on the fish processing. I know when I was with Recycle Hawaii, I felt horrible that I really couldn't help guy who called in saying, what can I do with all my fish waste? I said, well, it's really not anything available now. So that's great that's moving. Is there a function or role for the EMC relative to that?
I think I just brought it up for general awareness. I think we need to watch the process, and I don't know of anything that we need to do at this point in time, other than to be aware. And, you know, the director, I'm sure, will continue to keep us updated. The question, there's so many questions. Where is it? You know, we have a current compost supplier who may or may not be living up to their contractual obligations. So do we try to work with them, or do we try to do it at the DEM level? Or do we look for another contractor to do it? And then there's questions about where do we do it? I mean, one of the realities is that fish waste turning into compost does not smell particularly nice. And as Jay Nickerson, the harbor master, said, if you ever want to know what that's going to smell like, just come down and walk by one of the garbage bins at Honokaha Harbor, and you will get a whiff of it immediately. And as Ramsey pointed out, that's protein breaking down is what you're smelling. So if we're going to prevent that, the solution is to filter the air and do it in an enclosed building, but that's kind of ridiculous considering that we have sun for free, and that's an important part of the process. So likely this should be done somewhere where smell is not going to be an issue. So anyway, there's, like I said, there's many steps, and I think we just need to continually keep aware of it. But the bottom line is that the door's been opened, and we have a good citizen who is very interested in sustainable agriculture and willing to support it enough that they're going to provide the equipment to process this fish waste and turn it into what we need.
Well, I agree. Let's watch it go and let us know when you think there's a role for the council or the commission rather to get involved. and I would say that to all of you who are working different issues, that when you see there's the opportunity for the EMC to step in and do something more formal, pass a motion, make comments to the council, DEM, or the whatever that huge name committee that Tim Richards runs on environment, just to raise that to the group, so that again, I've been kind of looking at the priority list as ones that you're doing the background homework and the contacts to get information on when EMC can step in and help. So thank you very much, Rick. That was great. Dee, you want to tell us what you've been up to?
Yeah, but first of all, I just want to say kudos to Rick for his work on those three important fronts, the Kealakekee Harbor connection and fish waste and extended producer bills. Well done. So over down here in District 7, I just want to mention that we had a couple of significant rain events, and followed quickly by Health Department brownwater events. One on June 21st in Kailua Bay, and one on June 29th, shortly thereafter in Holualoa Bay. Both are in my district. Of course, Kailua Bay, which is in the background in my Zoom picture here, is a favorite for locals and Native Hawaiians. So it's upsetting when I see these things happening and think about the impacts on the corals. So I started some investigation, and I reached out to an agency called Three Mountains Foundation, I think it is. They kind of turfed me to Erica Perez, who I was already familiar with, who does water quality testing. And so the bottom line is, I'd like to find out more about why we're having these groundwater events. We don't know. I mean, I don't know personally. I suspect it's a combination of farming practices, residential development, pig and goat activity. We don't know. And since we don't know what's the generating of the problem, we can't even begin to speculate about solutions. But it certainly is something of interest to me because it looks like a preventable problem. And I'd like to continue working on that. I do have a question about chloride levels. That's on my priority list, but we'll circle back to that for the director's report. Thank you, Georgine.
Thank you, Commissioner Fulton. Anybody else have some progress to report? I have to say, as chair, I kind of take my prerogative to slide things into the agenda where there are issues that I'm interested in. Anybody else? Don't want to cut you off. Okay.
Georgine, I've got one other thing I just want to raise for the commission's awareness. The restroom facility in Miloli'i is going to be replaced by the county. And unfortunately, the wastewater system at that restroom facility is very close to the ocean. And the proposal for the upgrade, and you may be aware that the county is doing upgrades for ADA reasons, amongst other things, but the proposal was to basically continue the use of a septic system, even though the Miloli'i restroom, for anyone that's ever been down there and knows about it, is very, very close to the ocean. And the apparent thinking of the planners is that there's a whole bunch of cesspools along the shoreline there anyway, so why can't we just use the old technology at the restroom? And I think that thinking just has to stop. So I just wanted the other commissioners to be aware that there are still people apparently in county government that think it's okay to do things like restroom upgrades and not do the right thing with the wastewater system. So There is a proposal that's been made to utilize the technology that's been developed in Long Island and Florida Keys, amongst other places, for a layered absorption system as part of the septic system. It's going to be more expensive to install that, but it is a way to at least make an attempt to minimize the amount of pollution that's caused by that restroom rebuild.
I guess I have a question about jurisdiction, both to comments about the brown water and this restroom. You're talking about non-point discharges in the case of the brown water, and that's ruled by DOH, if I'm not mistaken. Is it something, Ramsey, are you still there? That EMC and DEM are appropriately set to manage?
Aloha, everybody, and thank you for the question. Yeah, most of this, I just spoke to Sina yesterday, and as part of the cesspool committee, we always try to find ways to definitely get off these cesspools and potentially septic tanks, because eventually there's no difference between a septic tank and a cesspool, pretty much because they all leach into the ground. So, so the idea is there is a lot of challenges ahead of us, especially with the Maui decision just was finalized. We need you guys as we work on the code, and I think part of it is how we're going to control development as far as the wastewater. We need to start thinking about policies and requirements for subdivisions and other development. I know you guys know that we are negotiating administrative order of consent for the pre-treatment program. So most of these restaurants, industrial users, they need to pre-treat before dispose to our sewer system or dispose into leaching into the ground. So some of these issues are being talked with the Department of Health, EPA, on the requirement. So definitely, because you all know, we're supposed to comply with pre-treatment back. I mean, the program was instated in 1989. So we are in 2021. So definitely, we have a few meetings with them, and we're in the process of negotiating that AOC. But definitely, your role, I see it as advisor. The advisory committee is as we navigate through the code changes. I know prior code, and even talking to Sina yesterday, definitely any development within the service area need to be tied into that sewer system. We need to do whatever we can to allow for that tie-in. Otherwise, we're going to continue in that cycle of just leaching into the groundwater.
Well, the issue of this restroom in Mililii, is that something where sewering is even an option?
Well, yeah, we had a meeting with Dr. Bennett and Dr. Kastner, trying to find out with more of the director of Parks and Recreation, because they're doing some project now, and we, based on direction from the mayor, let's start doing that pilot program into setting up a better sewer system. My understanding is during the discussion, they said there was not a project budgeted for the septic at this time because it was not a part of the improvement they're doing for the park. So, and the discussion led to say, yeah, because you got so close to the shore, and I'm sure that's what's causing some of that effluent. They only about 5.5 feet to the seawall, the leach line. So it's definitely become obvious some of that leach line, leach field leaching into the water. So and just looking at the number quick, I brought up to their attention that the system is also under design. But also they have a bigger issue, which is all these new subdivisions coming in. They're using, you got the old homes and cesspools, you got the new subdivision with septic tank, and each one of them is leaching to the ocean. So the idea is maybe we need to look at a more comprehensive waste treatment system. Because even at the park itself, because it's over 1,000 gallons per day, we may need to start looking at a aerobic treatment unit rather than even septic. So, but would that also address the concern from the residential homes that surrounded that park? So the idea maybe we need to look at a more comprehensive small treatment system for the whole village. I think, that probably what I would recommend, given the magnitude, not only from the park, but also from the homes around that area. And it's kind of flatter area. So the idea is maybe we need to create some type of facility district maybe and try to convert everybody into a treatment. Because under even the cesspool committee, that area, anything along the shoreline, considered priority number 1 areas. So the idea is you need to provide some type of treatment, not septic or cesspool. And that discussion is continuing. So that's why I think it's very important to start thinking about these subdivisions coming in and what we permitting versus what we need to permit. So I think that discussion has started with me and the planning department and the mayor. So that's going to continue. But anything that comes from you guys as a policy recommendation, that would be greatly appreciated.
Yeah. I think it's one of the items we've got listed under the director's report to talk about as well, in terms of making sure people are building new subdivisions that they are counting on. In fact, there will be sewering instead of relying on septic.
Yeah. The good thing is the park department, they have an ongoing project currently, Kole Park, and they're proposing to replace the septic. So we're going to intercept that design and maybe introduce the different filtration material. My goal is, as I've been talking to Dr. Bennett and Dr. Asner, is to be sustainable, we need to be able to reuse some of the resources we have. We have a great loose sand at the landfill. We got great wood chips and mulch that could introduce carbon to the system that could extract some of the nitrogen out of the effluent. So the idea is and I talked to Sina about it yesterday, she's totally on board. So the idea probably we need to intercept that design and create a pilot program based on the filtering material that I described, or the cake layering type of material that Dr. Bennett also has described. So at least now we're going to have the opportunity probably to tap into upcoming construction project and build a pilot program that we're going to monitor. And Dr. Bennett and Dr. Asner will collect the data and analyze it and assist us through the process.
Sounds good. Any other comments people had? ready to move on since we've got, take it back. Go to 5B on our agenda. We had talked about paint care. I saw Senna Berg is online. You want to catch us up with where you are on the paint care program?
Yes. Hi. We just actually spoke with Heidi McAuliffe of Paint Care a couple days ago about next steps. As in that it's a statewide project, we're working with the other diversion groups, like my counterparts and George's counterparts on the other islands, to see if it's something that indeed will work for us all moving forward. So yeah, we're moving along on it.
That's great. I keep muting and unmuting myself. Sorry about that. The next item was just if there were any comments now that the resolution 14321, which was to make sure that the recyclable materials that we're shipping out to other countries is going to be managed well, environmentally sound manner, a la the Basel Convention, and whether or not DEM has had a need or opportunity to look at what the ramifications are. Any updates you could give us on that?
We have reached out to our contractor or vendor right now. We're just starting a new contract year, so it's a bit busy. I have not heard back from him. One question they did have was, which is the question of the day, is not only what other countries have signed on, but it's weird. The U.S. never ratified, so it's kind of it's a great idea. So anyway, I have not heard back.
Okay.
Yeah.
And I do believe that the Department of Health, the State Department of Health, is the one that's supposed to be putting together the procedures and the requirements. And it was more just an update on where things stand, and just to make sure everybody knows that resolution, which is not a requirement, but a resolution, that we try to make sure that when we send things off, we're sending it to people who are going to manage it properly. For our recyclables. So moving on now to the director's report. Ramsey, you started away, but if you want to go ahead and start your director's report, I would prefer you go ahead and do the legislative update and then go to Naleo and Pahala item 2C on our agenda, just for the sake of our commenters, so that they can get a chance to hear that without sticking around for the whole meeting. So Ramsey, take it away.
Yes.
Oh, I also want to note, it looks like John Olson is online, correct, John?
Correct.
Welcome. Thank you. And sorry
Yeah,
about that, Ramsey. Go ahead.
Once again, aloha and thank you all. Thank you, Rick and Dee and Georgiana and all members for getting involved in ensuring our county and the island, from an advisory point of view, is right on track with the latest environmental protection that we can provide to the island, and much appreciated. As far as the report, Peter did a good job outlining everything, and definitely from a legislative update, you touched on some of the resolution, and the budget bill had already passed as stated in the report. Some of the definitely challenge that. Probably if you guys have seen the last council meeting about abandoned vehicle, our department did a great job not last weekend, the weekend before. Under my deputy director, they did a cleanup for the Ocean View area abandoned vehicle. We partnered with the communities, and we were able to get about 57 vehicles over the weekend under the beautification of the island. So definitely our goal to continue doing these type of program countywide. But as far as the Department of the Hawaiian Homeland resolution that went out last council meeting was deferred because our goal is DHHL wanted to pay for touring the vehicles, and then we pay for the disposal because it's on DHHL property. And that was deferred because DHHL property is a public property, therefore they, under our current code, the county will pay for it. So we, even though DHHL offered to pay for it, but there's that discussion with council member, and I'm gonna take that back to council member, and hopefully we'll invite representative from DHHL to come in because they the one who are driving that memorandum of agreement. So it's the whole idea is we need to partner with them and get into the beautification and try to clean up as much of that abandoned vehicle as we can. So that resolution probably is going to go back probably by the end of this month or early September. So we're working on that. As far as the Pahala Na'alehu,
Ramsey, could I interrupt and ask, relative to the tipping fee controversy, have you come up with solutions on how to deal with that? I mean, for everybody's background, it was that it used to be that there was a credit given to haulers who were taking residential.
We actually resolved that issue. We had a meeting with the hauler about a month and a half ago or so when the letter went out. There was a bit confusion about tipping fees versus residential credit. Our idea is commercial, and the only one that pays tipping fees. Residential, they never paid for landfill their waste when they take it to landfill. But the whole idea, the credit was part of our existing code, but for some reason in the last revision, it was omitted. And now we need to, the reason it was omitted, I still don't understand if it was error, typo, what have you, but it was omitted from the code. So the idea is we cannot charge a residential tipping fees for residential waste because if we're going to start penalizing the people that decide to hire a hauler to take their waste to a landfill, then we need to have a fee that goes across the board for all residential waste. So we had continued giving the credit, and we're going to set up a meeting with the hauler on quarterly basis to figure out and at least offset our admin costs, because it does cost us to administer these private haulers business. So, and the county cannot take on that cost because we have to recoup that cost somehow. So we're gonna be talking to the garbage hauler about moving forward, streamlining the process, and figuring out how we could potentially expand the collection. Because think about it, if everybody getting residential credit, all you have to do is just pay for your garbage to be pulled from your house. So that will create a better economic growth within island because it creates more jobs and it creates more incentives, but yet also will allow us to look at the transfer station. I had my operation division do numbers, which I was shocked to find out that we didn't have any idea how much these transfer station cost us per ton. But I finally got to the bottom of it, and some of these transfer station cost us about almost $500 per ton to operate, which is totally insane. And it's crazy costs at a $500 per ton when our actual tipping fees is $116 per ton. So it kind of give you, for a business model coming from a business background, it doesn't add up. So we definitely need to start looking at different operational and business models as we move forward. So I'm looking forward to filling that planner position so they could assist us on sitting down and start looking at the business model currently we have and how we can improve and making sure that we stay within the industrial practices, because even currently the cost per ton at the landfill is about $244, which is almost twice the amount that we charge. So we definitely in the negative. So definitely we need to look at it from a landfill and transfer station point of view, the cost versus the service we provide. So hopefully that answers your question about the tipping fees and residential accredited.
Thank you. And I think we'll have more discussion afterward when we talk about options for how do we fund our solid waste operations. So thank you. You can proceed. Thank you.
All right. I just want to thank Sandra and Jerry. Actually, Sandra and Jerry, you guys did bring a good comment today on the Pahala and Na'alehu. Just to let you know, Sandra, if you're listening, we did consider, you're right. This whole project, it just, we found out from the geotechnical study just back in April that we have lava tubes and potentially that changed our, even with the consultant, trying to take that liability of trying to excavate it was very, very risk taken, and it could potentially hold the whole project because of the potential of finding barrier sites as we start excavating. So the excavation was not feasible. So we have to kind of re-coordinate quick. We sat down with my staff and we were able to definitely look at the preliminary engineering report that was done and the EA that was done. We have currently Wilson Akamoto, who's our EA consultant, is looking at it. We're trying to finalize a letter to the EPA to address the concerns. But so far, we do feel that the EA is not going to be impacted. Actually, we're doing better environmental impact with the process we're moving forward, but we need to get EPA on board with what we have submitted. Our goal is, if we're going to meet the AOC deadline, the only way that we can meet it is do the design build based on performance driven criteria, because the AOC is only about secondary pre-treatment. So we could achieve that, utilizing too many different processes based on the preliminary engineering report that was part of the EA that was submitted initially. So we're not going to exit out of what was discussed during the EA and the preliminary engineering report, but we're going to do it based on a design-driven performance criteria that's going to be bid out and design built to be able to meet that deadline. As far as the macadamia farm, and definitely the reason we went to the drip system is to avoid hauling and tearing down the ground and even demolishing these macadamia trees, because the macadamia trees with their roots, they're going to be our, they're going to be our disposal field. So as we dispose of the effluent is going to be absorbed by the roots of these trees. So the idea is it's very beneficial to keep the trees for the purpose of disposal. So that way it doesn't percolate into the ground. It'd be sucked through the roots, and it, become very kind of win-win situation for the whole operation. So and that's going to minimize also the area of excavation and disturbance. We're looking about probably less than 2 acres for the mechanized system versus disturbing the 14-acre excavate lava tube and chase it all the way. God knows how deep we could chase it to, but the idea is from an environmental point of view, we feel strong that actually we doing less impact, and we are minimizing the environmental impact on the proposed design the approach that we're going to take. So so definitely you guys, Sandra and Jerry, brought up good points, and these points already being looked at, considered as, from an operation and design point of view, and much appreciated for that. And as Rick had mentioned, definitely we're working on some challenges, and we're going to continue working on that. Dee, definitely thank you for bringing the Kailua Bay groundwater issues. Keep us posted what you find out, and hopefully with the pre-treatment programs also that can restrict any industrial or commercial discharger, and it's going to put more screws on how they need to pre-treat before they discharge. So maybe that could be a help as we move forward. As far as the chloride in our effluent, they coming in at 500, and they pretty much leaving at the 500 milligram per liter. So we have not seen increase. Our sewer crew continues to do the slip lining in the sewer pipe that we believe, as we televise, that needs it. So definitely I reorganized our department, where I had now a person specially assigned just for the dedication of the sewer collection for the whole island. That way they pay more attention on the scheduling and the cleaning and televising the entire system, set a priority, and tackle that priority based on special ranking that we're working on. And like I said, I'll be more than happy to take questions from you guys. But yes, we have a lot of stuff that we're working on. You all heard about the Maui decision, and that also may have an impact on some of our waste treatment plant. Currently, we have 2 injection wells, Honoka and Kaloko, and Kalakaua, of course, because it's a sump, but it's not an injection well, but it's a percolation. But because it is reaching the ocean and the bay, so that would be considered as discharge. So all of that could be impacted. So definitely, it's a matter of kind of waiting on the Department of Health and EPA as we move forward to be able to navigate through these challenges.
Rick, sorry about that. They're doing reconstruction next to my apartment, drilling into concrete. So I'm keep muting myself, hoping to avoid it. Did you have some follow-up on your questions on the requests for monies and CIP projects? Did those charts that Ramsey gave you satisfy your queries?
Not entirely. They were very helpful, but I have a couple of carryover questions, if I may. One of them is has a source of funding been identified? And if so, is it going to be grants, or is it going to be loans, or a combination thereof? And if it's a combination thereof, what percentages are we likely talking about between the two?
Definitely, the funding is always going to be a challenge because, as you guys know, my department does not. I know I've been told many times the funding falls in the finance department, even though sometimes we're trying to chase it and find ways. But, you know, my staff and myself, we were told that leave the funding to the finance department. So with that being said, we, you know, as the department being responsible for these projects, we're going to keep pushing these projects. And I think shout out to the mayor for, you know, putting these wastewater as priority number one. He's been pushing it as one of his top priority, and we have been trying to push our projects, and we were able to work with the finance department. And we had, based on Pahala now, who's going to be state revolving fund, and we're going to, you know, have the commitment for that. As far as Hilo treatment plan, we were committed to $50 million construction funding through floating bond. So finance department is going to flow a bond for that project. And we also have submitted our WIFI application just last week for also another $50 million to address some of our forced main and pump stations. So we have approximately a total of $200 million that I understand that we have the funding for based on what I described. So the idea is now to proceed forward and get these projects out on the street.
Okay, if I may follow up, clearly you're aware of the figures, but basically your budget is $1 billion, and what you've just outlined is 200,000 of that. So that's only a small piece. It's 20%. And correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe that the funding sources that you just described are all essentially loans. The bonds have to be paid back. The state revolving funds also have to be paid back. What's the effort that's going forward with regard to pursuing the federal funds that the Congress is hopefully in the process of finalizing right now as we speak, and other grant opportunities that are out there for community development, like Economic Development Authority and so forth?
Yeah, we are chasing that as well. As you know, for the North Corner Pump Station, we hopefully could get that $19.5 million grant funding. So that's a grant, not a loan. We're going to continue pursuing that. The rest is definitely, we've been talking to our elected officials. The mayor has been reaching out to our U.S. Senate's, Hawaii State Senate's and House representative, trying to make sure that we could tap into the federal funding when it comes to the infrastructure or wastewater. So definitely that is being, our daily discussion. And like I said, I want to thank the mayor for putting that as priority number one on his agenda. And all department heads understand it is priority number one. So the idea is, I think it's try to balance, even if you get $1 billion, you're gonna kind of tip the scale on the debt ratio because most of it is gonna be loan. So definitely our finance department is gonna look at it and say, you're not gonna get your $1 billion all at once, but at least we got 200,000, which is a good start. We never had that much commitment to start with. So definitely things are changing. We're pushing for projects, we're pushing for change, and hopefully we can start seeing the fruits out of it.
Yeah, thanks for that. My obvious concern is, as a taxpayer on this island, looking at the debt for $1 billion in loans spread out amongst a population of 180,000 people, it gets pretty onerous. So that's why I asked the question. I have one small follow-up question also on the drip disposal system that's being proposed for Pahala. Will that have to be an underground drip system, or can that be surface drip?
It's gonna be underground because the type of effluent that we're gonna have, it's the whole purpose of some drip system, because it could allow for R3 or R2 water to be utilized for purpose of ag use, especially if there's no public access. So our intent is to be able to, the county acquired the 14.9 acres, so it's going to be totally fenced, and it's going to be 8-inch below ground.
Okay.
We will be discussing, I'm just looking through the questions that we submitted to you. We will be discussing funding, but the latest buzz obviously is a TAT, and what we can do with it, whether anybody will want to do with it. Can you tell us about any conversations you've been involved with on should we try to go for a piece of that, for whether it's wastewater or solid waste? Or preferably for sustainability?
Yeah, I think any effort is very appreciated, and I think we should not give up. I think we should continue trying any possible option, because you guys seen the CIP list and the project list, and that just for wastewater doesn't even include solid waste. From the solid waste aspect of things, we're looking at resource recovery of extracting the gas within our landfill to be able to provide for hydrogen vehicles, hydrogen stations. So we have going to tap into the state consultant, because we don't have to go through the RFP process, because the state already had designated a consultant that counties could utilize for the energy, the green energy, performance-driven energy contracts. So we're looking into that. So definitely anything that we could tap into, and possible funding, new technology that can make us sustainable. This is the intent. As you guys all know, that's also the mayor's first top priority back in March, through that sustainability summit that he put out to the whole state. It's, we need to be sustainable. So we're looking at every option possible. I can't hear you.
Last item, so I know. Doing crazy with my mouse here. Lee, did you need some more follow-up on Wahino?
The transfer station or the sewer?
Transfer station?
For the transfer station, the question I had was about, they suddenly started requiring that we could only throw brush in the dumpster from 4 no, from 8 to 4. And so before it didn't matter. So we were just trying to figure out if that was a new policy or rule. And if so, were you going to put out signs so that we know, because we don't like going down to the dump and then having to bring back what we take because they won't let us toss it.
Yeah, Lee, that's a good question. My understanding, this is only a temporary situation because the security contractor that we contracted with, they don't have yet they have a hard time hiring people. As you guys know, it's hard to find hire, from restaurants to businesses on the island. It's hard to find people to hire. The security guy trying to recruit for staff because they the one who goes in the morning and open it from 6 to 8 and from 4 to 6. Therefore, not having the staffing, we adjusted the hours from 8 to 4 till the security consultant be able to hire the staff that could offset that. But our goal is, yes, my understanding, my division chief had put signs and notified everybody, but if not, I'll check with him. I don't know if he's on the call today. Greg, if you're on, please chime in. But if not, we could follow up with him and find out.
And the another question I had was, I've seen they've done a little bit of dozing and clearing at Wai'ihinu. Have they started construction or is they just cleaning it up? What's the status of that?
Yeah, my understanding, this construction has started on that project. So you guys gotta be patient with us and they're rerouting some of the traffic, but yes, that project has started.
And I had another question, but it went back to the dates for the potential dates for the Nalehu sewer project. The ones that are listed, I think going all the way up to 2027. How did you, what are those from? Is that what you're working towards, asking them to allow us to meet those goals? Or as I mean, some people saying that the EPA is still requiring the 2023 deadline, but then the report says we have longer. So I was just trying to reconcile the two statements.
No, that's fine. I think Jerry brought a good point because you're right. EPA kind of put a my understanding, when the department was working on the deadline, EPA agreed to give them the same pretty much deadline for Pahala, with the idea is this is just kind of overall, and they were willing to negotiate and extend the time, but they gave an umbrella type of date of the 2023. I put a note to myself to follow up and look at the record and figure out that I need to find out where the 2027 came in. I'll talk to the consultant and our staff, but my understanding was they gave us, it wasn't even negotiated. They just gave us one drop dead date. They didn't even have milestone of the 2023 with the idea is to see what's going to happen in Pahala and kind of work through it. But yeah, that's we are cognizant of the deadline of Nalehu of 2023.
Does it satisfy you, Lee? Do you want him to get back to you then on clarifying the dates?
Yeah, you can update it, I guess, on the next meeting. What he finds out.
Next director's report? We can.
Yeah, we'll have it on the next director report.
Okay, thank you. Rick, I'm just going through the laundry list of questions. Did you want to ask about the DEM versus DWS management of recycled water?
Well, the question's asked and answered. I'm frankly not sure that that's the best approach. It's been pointed out in the past that DWS already has a system for managing water billing. And so it would make sense for them to manage the billing for all kinds of water as opposed to creating a new system of billing where one doesn't exist in DEM. So I asked the question because I wanted to know what direction DEM was going in, and Ramsey answered that, and that's
Okay.
fine, except I'm still going to continue to ask whether or not there might be a better way. And I was frustrated at the time when DWS basically said, no, we're not interested, because practically it works well on Oahu and Maui, where their DWS manages both drinking water and reclaimed water. So I'm going to continue to pursue the question, but I think the question was answered.
Okay, I mean, I think there is a difference between sending bills, which they do for sewering, which is just, here's a bill that you get, versus actually managing and looking for opportunities and working with potential users and actual users, and just managing the molecules of water that have been recycled in addition to doing the billing. And I think that that's what you're talking about, is who's managing where that water is going to go.
Yeah, that's correct. Obviously, DWS is involved when somebody says we're going to build a new subdivision. They need to see what the plumbing for that is going to look like, where the pipe's coming into the properties, and so on and so forth. Metering is also something that they have a hand in. So it seems like a natural extension. And as I said, it's been proven in other counties that it's that it makes more sense for it to be done by a single agency than having two different agencies overseeing effectively the same thing. So I think we can continue to discuss this over time, but at some point, this probably goes to the council and possibly to the mayor's office as well. DWS is an interesting institution because it's quasi-governmental. So we are effectively their boss. I don't mean we as DEM, I mean we as citizens. But there are questions about how they're managed by either the council or the mayor or both. So it's complex, but I appreciate the answer to my question, but I'm going to continue to provide oversight, shall we say.
I have a question to follow up with you, Rick. Was there any reason that DWS gave that they were not interested?
My recollection is that no, they just said we're not interested.
Okay.
So this morning's paper, West Hawaii Today, has a story about DWS's continued problems with managing their pumping and water distribution in West Hawaii. So it may have been based on that they just don't want any more work. But it's an ongoing question, as I said. At some point, I think we might want to reach out to the council and say, please consider having hearings on this subject so that the public can be informed as to what DWS's reasoning is. They may have a very good reason. Our island is very different from Oahu and Maui in terms of size and population densities. So they may be looking at that factor. But it just from a citizen's point of view, it just seems to me to make sense that if somebody's managing water to individual subdivisions and homeowners, it would make more sense if they're managing all forms of water to those individuals.
Yeah, just food for thought as we talk about different funding. Definitely the sewer environmental assessment fees still looming over my head. There could be a possibility that everybody that uses water end up disposing of that water. What comes in through the faucet is going to go out somehow, either through a cesspool, septic tank, or a sewer system. So the idea was setting up environmental assessment sewer system that could allow us to provide better funding for protecting our shorelines and the groundwater. And you're right. And then definitely what we need to do, tap into the billing system. And that'll be a county-wide, and it'll become everybody uses the water is going to dispose of that water. And we're going to charge the fees to be able to, protect the same water that they're using.
So did you get the money from the approved council budget to hire somebody to look at wastewater funding?
No, we did not.
The other idea that we threw out to the council was the idea of establishing an enterprise fund,
Yes.
looking at it as a business model. And I think what you're talking about there is looking at what are the services the county provides and how do we pay for those services and what makes logical sense. I would certainly agree with you that you use the water, you're going to dispose of the water, and who's taking care of that disposal. There is a nexus to look at, really a total cost accounting approach to it and making sure that people are paying proper fees. So I guess disappointing that we didn't get anybody to look at that, but I guess keep pushing on it and see.
That's what Rick's saying. He's
let's
going to
create
continue.
ideas.
He's going to continue asking the question, and I'm going to continue pushing the issue.
There you go. Okay.
Chair Adams, could we take a 5-minute recess?
Oh, we need a break. We need a break. Yes, I was told I'm terrible at offering breaks. So everybody, we will take a 5-minute break, and at least on my clock, how about we restart at 10:30? It's a little more than 5 minutes. Is that okay with everyone? Go for it. Thank you.
Earlier earlier for the director's report, I'd waved my hand. I just had a kind of a general question, but it's
Okay, we'll come back to you.
EMC. Thank you.
Okay, 10:30 and we're back online. Ramsey, are you there?
Yes, I'm here. Still here.
Okay. Now Dee disappeared. I understand that Dee Fulton had a question that I missed her asking you. So go ahead, Dee Fulton.
Okay, thank you, Chairman Georgine. Ramsey, this is just a really basic general question. And I know there's been some chatter among my colleagues about membrane bioreactors. And I don't mean to come across really naive about this, but has any consideration been given to that technology for some situations like Na'alehu?
That is a great question, Dee. And yes, actually, the design plan submitted to EPA with MBR design performance criteria or equivalent.
So you're saying the plan that's been currently submitted for consideration has that component?
Yeah, the one we submitted July 24th to EPA, based on the design performance, it has the NPR or equivalent.
Ah,
Yes.
thank you.
One other item, or two, I guess. I understand you've got the funding from current budget to go forward with a life cycle assessment of our recycle operations. So I understand that's coming. And we'll wait for when that's ready to be presented to the commission. So yay for doing that. And then just the last item I've got under Director's Report 4A, discussion, which we had a little bit of, installing septic or sewer lines in new developments that are not accessible to sewer, but may be accessible in the future. Just if there was more you wanted to comment about that, Ramsey.
Definitely with the Maui decision and my upcoming meeting with the mayor to talk about, the strategy of how we're going to move forward with all these challenges from the Maui decision to be able to create affordable housing, to be able to get the economic growth that we need. All of these factors play in of how we're going to move forward. So definitely I had my staff working on laying out all the collection system within the west side, the east side, wherever we have treatment plan, to kind of understand the extent of that spider web and how we're going to connect the dots. And we got, definitely with the cesspool conversion, that's another challenge. So we got, general plan amendment until 2040. We got the cesspool conversion 2050, and we got, so we got some time. So if we don't plan it right now, we're gonna find ourselves back into the same sand hole that we have been for years. So the idea is we better start getting smart. We better start planning smart and figure out, okay, there's a purpose why we call it service area, because eventually the whole area is going to be serviced with sewer. So, and kind of common sense is if it's sewer far away from it, you put a dry sewer and put a septic tank. But some argument could say, well, but that's not going to make it affordable. But it's affordable housing. But the answer to that, affordable housing could be done, and no matter how affordable you're going to do it, it's going to be based on the market value. And somebody's going to come outbid the affordable house and make it more non-affordable, because as you guys know how the market works. So somebody in the mainland may not decide unseen and give $100,000 over any affordability that we're trying to establish. So there's so many factors, and then the idea is, in talking to Sina, she said, yes, they're, because they in charge of the septic and they allow for dry sewer. We had it in our codes and somehow it got dropped. It only was limited for 10 years from 1989. So I would imagine when they built the treatment plan, they said anybody within the service area, you have to do dry sewer. Somehow it was modified to say it's 10 years after the 1989. So we need to go back and that should not have a drop date on it from where I see it, because this is the best planning. This is standard practice anywhere in the country. When you are within service area, you provide both. And it's cheaper now to bypass the cost to the consumer than wait 20 years and try to dig up the road And that'll be as costly as Apollo and not Lou, because they don't have the interior collection. So some of these discussion, but I'd like to, because you guys, the advisory committee, you represent different districts. I'd like to see what, what you guys think. And so as we navigate through the policies, at least we're trying to get one size fits all may not be adequate. Maybe we need to have different strategy of how we're gonna be able to connect the dots and be able to do it early in the game rather than late in the game. And also trying to figure out who's gonna pay for it. The county cannot keep picking up the tab forever for everybody. Because like you said, it gets very expensive.
So as I understand it, the current Hawaii County Code had set up a requirement that any new subdivisions or had to put in sewer lines that would connect to a sewer treatment plant, even if the sewer treatment plant wasn't in place yet. But they had set this hard date of 1989 and any time within 10 years. Well, we're way past 10 years of 1989. Right. So there needs to be some modification, but it seems like it makes sense that, yeah, you build a new subdivision, you're going to be putting in lines that will connect eventually to what we, on a long-term basis, would hope to build sewage treatment plants. And I guess I don't see personally a problem with that for any new developments. Existing developments, a lot more difficult to talk about. And there may be some rare exceptions to that rule, but you deal with it as an exception rather than as the general requirement. Unless there are those of you around who think, well, there's some reason that we wouldn't want to go to sewer treatment. Anybody have thoughts, comments, want to think about it more?
Mr. McIntosh, what do you mean about what do you mean by your question? What are you asking? Not very clear.
Yeah, some of the districts, you guys don't have a treatment plan. So, and that's going to be definitely the exception, because if you don't have a treatment plan, so your only way of disposal of either ATU, which is aerobic treatment unit, or some type of, based on what Tina was saying, they're going to start requiring subdivision to have their own treatment system, because they cannot have a cluster of septic tanks. So, which makes sense to me. Yeah, so it's a lot of challenges. It's going to be a lot of changes coming. So the question is, from an advisory point of view, from the commission, is how do you guys foresee our policies to be shaped like? When it comes to regulating our sewer system and our waste treatment plan, when it comes to subdivisions and new development.
Yeah, Ramsey, I was just going to make a comment on that. I mean, I think it's a really important consideration. I think
that's John Burns, Commissioner John Burns speaking.
Oh, thanks, Georgine. First. Yeah, District 1. And so, yeah, I think, unfortunately, it's rare that government action plans or policies adapt any form of a pragmatic approach, but considering the budget constraints and the realities with retrofitting a lot of these systems, I know it's going to be difficult and it might be unrealistic, but I think there needs to be sort of prioritized areas that don't need really full investigations, but just can rely almost sometimes on common sense. Taking where I am right now, we have a lot of soil, right? So the issues we have with contaminants going into groundwater or out into ocean waters are going to be dramatically different than South Kona areas or areas near the coastline. And even on the Kona coast, there's a lot of research projects I've been involved with through looking at the flow of water, from the mountain through our very, very dynamic subterranean water system. But, we know that the closer you are to that runoff area, the more you're going to have an issue of contaminants. And so it's just going to be nearly impossible, I think, on an island of this size with the different environments that we have to make a one size fits all plan. And it's going to have to be dynamic. And I know that's like, again, reaching for the stars, but maybe that rubric and just saying, hey, look, let's go into this, adapting unique plans for each district, and let's have a prioritizing mindset, knowing we just simply, it's always the same case. We don't have the money to do all of it at once, but if we prioritize, you could at least chip away instead of having a roadblock that kind of stops anything from happening, because there are those small areas where I think the time is now to make change. And there's other areas where we could realistically say those resources could be best, set aside until we need to get to there, right? It's just not the same top priority. So hopefully that makes some sense, but I just think that's the reality we face with the current budget situations.
Yeah, John, you hit it right on. You're right. It's not going to be one size fits all, because we're dealing with decentralized versus centralized location, urban versus rural areas. So the idea, that's why, because you guys do represent different districts, I like to get a feedback from each one of you on how you guys foresee that for your district, and how you like to shape our policies when it comes to sewer tie-in versus sewer treatment versus septic versus cesspools. Because definitely the driving force would be the Department of Health, because they're going to be the decision maker on it. But we have to modify our code to also be in compliance with Department of Health and our needs, because we are different. So yeah, you hit it right on. I mean, it's that's the reason we try to talk about it, because it's not going to be one size fits all. And we don't have the soil in certain area. We have lava tube. Some areas they have the soil, which is allowed for better percolation. So it's going to be site specific. But the challenge is, if you have a service area, it's already being dedicated to be tied into sewer. So, you have the existing condition versus the upcoming conditions. We did not control the existing conditions, so I'd rather use it as a lesson learned. So as we apply the future, we learned from our mistake. And that's my intent.
John Olson here.
Go ahead, John.
Hello. I have seen examples on this island of both incineration and evaporation units that deal with solid waste, and some of them have actually succeeded in getting permitted. So I think, as the director has said, there's an awful lot of options out there, if you open the door.
This is Commissioner McIntosh. The other thing to consider when deciding the policies, or at least moving in the future, is that if you require new subdivisions, if you require them to also create their own treatment plan or whatever, you want to avoid the problems where they just kind of slap something together and then they throw it at the county, and you're ended up like, I think you said there's at least 2 instances where they've just fallen apart and they're not really operating correctly, that the county now has to fix. So when you're envisioning it, you kind of want to think about the whole island and how to figure it out. And is the county going to be responsible for it or not?
Well, that is a great point, Lee, because as a government entity, always the private, from a political maneuvering, you're right. They're going to say, we're not in the business of wastewater. Let's give it to the government. And I hate to see the county taking over, 100+ subdivision treatment plans in the future. That's why I think we need to be able to kind of work with the planning department and look at their general plan 2040 and see where the growth is going to take, projected growth, and start planning it better. It may, cost the developer more, it may cost us more, but at least we'll have a better system for the long run and for the long term of being sustainable on this island. Otherwise, we're going to be 20, 30 years down the road talking about the same thing, because eventually septic is going to be obsolete. Now we got rid of cesspool, now we're going to try to get rid of septic so we can either intercept it now and plan ahead for a long-term solution or Band-Aid. And that's where the challenge is. We have a lot of players and we have a lot of moves to make. But like I said, that's the reason we need to continue talking about it, and see what you all think, because it is going to impact different districts.
Could I propose that maybe we could work together to come up with a survey question, if you will, with a little bit more background that we can give to each of the commissioners as homework to bring back thoughts for our next meeting?
Yeah, that is good. Actually, I was reading that community development plan for the west side that was done, and I through a major community involvement, and they wanted to see, definitely, I remember reading one paragraph says, no permits unless all infrastructure in ground. So, so that discussion seemed like it being taking place for the last 10, 20 years. And it seemed like it made it into our code, but for some reason, they modified it to say 10 years after 89, instead of just, forever till we build the whole service area. And and I think that's somehow dropped the ball, and people start building it without that dry sewer. Now we got so many disconnects, and now who's going to pay for it? Is it going to be a facility community district? And how are you going to get 50+1 vote? Because people are not going to, they're going to say, well, I'm okay with my septic. See, it becomes a problem. But if you handle it from the get-go with one developer, rather than 200 different people, you already solved it. So hopefully, this is the intent, but like I said, any feedback you guys give to shape our policies would be greatly appreciated.
Okay, I was just thinking that it might help people to have it laid out a little bit more in terms of, this is what it's about. These are the 2 or 3 questions we have. Go do a little bit of sounding out or thinking about your own district and what that means, and then come back rather than us answering the question cold.
Yeah, think of it as your district, how you would like to provide wastewater services to your district. Some of the districts don't have any wastewater. So just as an individual, think about, okay, Puna district, I don't have a wastewater treatment. County's it's going to be doing a feasibility study to see if there's feasibility to put a waste treatment plan. If not, then how is that going to shape up for the district? Is it going to continue being septic, or is it going to be individual treatment based on subdivision and commercial? Just the standard thinking of how you want to see your district being serviced with that wastewater.
Yeah,
Okay.
I'd like to comment on this discussion. What we're effectively talking about here is a wastewater master plan for the island. And while I think it's valuable that each of us as commissioners provide input for our districts and what we think that fits, there's so many more parameters to master planning. To me, it's something that ought to be on our wish list for this federal money that's likely coming down for wastewater. And that would be, the process would be to hire a consultant to do a wastewater master plan for the island. So that consultancy would then involve all of us. It would involve constituents in all of our districts. And it would be akin to the community development plans, which were very well attended processes in the last two go-rounds that I'm aware of. So I think that rather than this being a project for DEM, that it's really a much, much larger project because it involves DEM, it involves planning, potentially it involves DWS, it involves other agencies. And this is a natural fit to the mayor's desire to look at this island from a sustainability point of view. Because that also involves, if we're master planning for wastewater, that also involves the use of that water and its contributions to the what's it called when you regenerate, when you the addition of wastewater to the aquifers is actually a good thing in the long run. So
It charges the aquifer. Yeah.
that's it, recharges. That's the word I was looking for. So I really think it's important for DEM and the council to begin to look at master planning for wastewater on this island, because to my knowledge, it's never been done. And there's a lot of technical aspects to that that have to be considered.
I would definitely, it's Georgine, I would definitely agree with you, Rick, that what we're talking about, and I wouldn't just say wastewater management, it's water management. And along with the contamination that occurs to that water along the way and decontamination. And there's no way that this commission can give the answers to all of that. I think it was more a case of we can maybe bubble up some of the issues that we're aware of or unique situations for our districts as a starting point, but we certainly aren't going to be able to put together this huge master plan. But it is what we would hope to have is an overall island water management plan that is trying to determine sustainable use of water. And so what is the next step?
John Olson again,
Go ahead,
if I
John.
may. From my side, this is kind of like deja vu all over again. We have in the past tried to get something similar to what we're talking about now started. In the past, the largest obstruction has been the State Department of Health. Beyond that, this island is unique in that we have, 22 of the 23 described climate zones. So a plan that will work for one district or areas in one district will probably not be appropriate for all districts. Dry side, wet side, altitude, all of those things that come into play. This is, I'm not saying don't do this. We've got to do it, but it is going to be a challenge. For the moment, that's all I'll say about it.
Thank you, John. Well, let me work offline with Ramsey on how we might be able to package this so that we can have a more productive meeting next time to discuss the topic. But we need to move on to the big discussion we were going to have, and that's on funding for solid waste management. If that's okay for us to go next to. Anybody have any comments I've got to put in right now? Seeing none. Okay, the topic, we gave our advice on challenging with how do we fund wastewater management for what that's the worst category. Now we'll go to solid waste management. And I was going to start the conversation off with my version of what we did with the Solid Waste Advisory Committee, Integrated Solid Waste Management Plan, in thinking about funding. We didn't know the answer, obviously, but we did come up with various ideas to at least kick off the discussion. I doubt very much whether we'll come up with a motion saying this is how you should fund it, Ramsey. But to begin the discussion. So if I can, I will share my screen and do a little PowerPoint for you just to kick off the conversation, okay? See if I can do it. Can you see my slides?
Yes, we can.
Anybody?
Yes, we can.
Yeah, we can see.
Okay. So this is me coming up with a summary that I will talk through for those of you on the phone of ideas that we went through with this Solid Waste Advisory Commission on funding opportunities, because we also recognize that that is the bane of our existence. There's no money. So I did run this by George Hidusco, and I'm not sure if Greg Goodall had a chance to look at it, but these are, again, my interpretation and ideas, and meant more as conversation starter rather than facts that should be published in a newspaper. So basically, we're looking at a solid waste fund that has $38 million in it, looking at the 2022 numbers and into the future, with landfill being the biggest eater of the cost at 27 million. So where do the revenues come from? First is a general fund through our property taxes funds about 65% of that solid waste revenues. It's not the greatest in the world. It doesn't have any financial incentive to reduce waste, which is what we really want to do. It has no relation to how much waste a resident generates. If you have a big house, you pay more in property tax, but that may or may not relate to how much waste you're doing. So there's some unfair subsidies going on relative to the amount of waste that's generated. And there's nothing dedicated to solid waste management. It's every time there's a budget crunch, they go looking for money and they could take it from the general fund to put it wherever the need is perceived. We get about 33% of the funding from tipping fees and permits. Doesn't cover the cost, as Ramsey had said. I don't know, you can have him pipe in with some of the real numbers that it costs $240 a ton and we only charge 116. It's free to residents. They really don't see or feel a cost to waste management. And then we talked about today the fact that there was this credit issue, which apparently Ramsey's trying to make go away. And we have to go to the council to schedule any increases. So we're up to $116 a ton for 2022. The recycle program operates off of grants, covers about 2% of the budget. High Five is self-sufficient. It gets paid for, the nickel goes into a fund from the manufacturers, exporters, if you will, to Hawaii. And that money pays for the collection and the rebates that we get. Non-high five glass is covered by an advanced deposit, again by the manufacturers, but it only covers about 50% of the cost of actually having to recycle that glass. Electronics is pitiful. We really need at least $250,000. And for 2022, we're getting $85,000. One of the recommendations we made in the solid waste plan was we need more electronic waste collection events around the island. Well, too bad. They've shrunk a third to stay within the budgets that were given. The money's controlled by the state DOH and the governor. So again, things get pulled out to cover minor issues like COVID. Our need from a revenue standpoint is we need to cost effectively reduce and divert waste from landfill. Otherwise, we're paying for it. So what gets shorted? Education, education, education was our primary recommendation from the SWAC. We need to tell people how they can reduce the generation of waste. Staffing, again, we heard again about how they can't staff the transfer stations. We need to make maintenance and ease of use improvements, and those get cut, and you just let it rust a little more and use duct tape. We need to have some opportunity, some money to perform analysis of operations, to do financial, and we'll do a little bit of life cycle impacts. So we'll see how that educates us. Planning and auditing gets pushed down the road, and evaluating and piloting alternatives, because we don't have the ability to fund pilots and see if they work and allow them to fail. As far as capital improvement projects, they're paid for with bonding, but as Rick pointed out, that's a loan. Even if the budgets are authorized, they're subject to change depending on today's need. Again, solid waste doesn't have dedicated monies. And something that is not always recognized up front is that you have to pay contractors and your employees, but you also need to have staff to oversee project design and implementation. And a lot of things aren't being done just because we don't have the people within the DEM who can actually oversee the work that a contractor would do. Ideas that we had were kind of all over the map. So this is an oddball collection of it. Set up an enterprise fund, same concept that we had for the wastewater management, focusing it on user fees, dedicated taxes that are going to solid waste. We could institute some more fair charges by volume of waste generated rather than a fixed fee for everybody. Running it like a business, it becomes customer focused. It's more transparent. There's more accountability and more flexibility within the operations of the solid waste management option. Against it, it's politically unpopular. It can be regressive. It costs a lot, even if you're at the low end. The money should go to things that are more important of the day rather than nailed down to a particular operation like solid waste management. We've already been starting to look at extended producer responsibility. We could increase the fees on the programs that we already have for glass and electronics, for example, come up with new categories of products. There are a lot of logistical and administrative hurdles. We are a single island in a state. And again, it takes people to set up systems to be able to manage it. And it's hard when it's a state program to make sure the county's going to get its fair share. one item which isn't going to generate revenue, but it begins the education process, is to make the fees that we do have in the property tax as a line item and start educating people that waste management is not free. Another whole program that's out there that has all sorts of pros and cons around it is called Pay As You Throw. It's where you basically charge a fee for the waste that you throw away. Waste costs a lot more than recyclables. Right now, we make recycling free for residential and as well as for waste. Well, unless you start putting a cost on things, people don't care. They aren't going to differentiate. So it makes it cheaper to recycle something. And then you've got the issues of they're just going to throw it in the ditch or in a lava tube. And you need to be able to manage the littering. Also, the fact that we just don't have a lot of curbside pickup available on this island. And it's going to be tough to institute it. And then look at grant opportunities always. The other end of it is reduce costs. Again, if you had the money to do education, you could reduce the amount of waste generated, enhance our reuse capabilities, and recycle, especially where we could generate money with the recycled materials. It is now already, and that was a part of the top priorities of the solid waste management plan, was to renegotiate the waste management contract for West Hawaii sanitary landfill. Basically, that had been set up as we guarantee a certain amount of waste to go in and pay by ton to waste management. It is totally opposite of what we want to do, and that is to reduce the amount of waste going in our landfills and to maybe look at ways to reward waste management for helping us keep stuff out of the landfill. And then just conducting financial analysis, looking to improve our operations. Sounds like Ramsey's thinking about that for the transfer stations, and looking at life cycle analysis, the total cost of really what our current operations are all about. And that is the end of my slide. So I will stop share. Food to get you thinking. Comments, this is one of John's big areas, so feel free, John, if you want to take the first shot at comments.
Was I thinking that loudly? Point of purchase. Collect the disposal fee at the point of purchase. A starting point, 1 cent on the dollar. It gets you funding for making the analysis of what it actually costs to dispose of the things that are brought in. And it grows as that cost rises. This puts the consumer in the driver's seat. He knows what it costs to get rid of what he just bought. So it takes it away from simply being a function of the property tax. I have no illusion that it is not going to be a substantial challenge. But if we continue to do it the way we're doing it, we're going to go broke. Because we don't have the consumer in the driver's seat. He has no idea. You walk into the store, you see something, you grab it, you pay the money, and you walk out the door, and it may cost 1 cent to get rid of it, or it may cost $100. They have no idea. I have no idea. So that's the best I can do for the moment. Go ahead.
Yeah, just to give you guys a heads up, I had a meeting with our finance department about a month ago with the idea of entertain the legality of setting a user fee. So my understanding, our finance director is working with our attorney, county attorney to figure out you know, what are the legal obligations if we set a user fee? So we need to figure out first, is it legally doable or not? I hope it's doable because every other county and city and all across the country have this type of system. Definitely trying to set up, it could be a hybrid program. It could be a user fee to cover some of the costs, and it could be fee that collected at the time of purchase to allow people, like what John was saying, understand the cost of disposal. But unfortunately, it comes down to the human behavior. People will pay the extra penny or two because at that point, they want the product. And we see it as we speak when it comes to tires and batteries and what have you. So the idea is we may be able to set that fee, but we'll be on the same, I mean, we're gonna have more revenue, definitely, which is gonna help us to get rid of that stuff. But I don't know if it's gonna deter people from purchasing, because people wanna buy it, they're gonna buy it. Our behavior as a human is we feel that the entitlement, I want the biggest, the better, and what have you. So if we don't do a human behavior education to educate the public, and I think to me that's what it comes down, public education, to allow them to understand, what happens when you flush the toilet, what happens when you buy something from Costco with boxes and plastics. To me, that's really, we need to also trying to invest more money into the public education, because as a new generation comes along, they'll be well educated and more environmentally careful about what to do with things.
So Ramsey, I have a question. This is Elise. Can you speak about the strategies with education that has been done or that should be done, or anything about that?
Unfortunately, it comes back to funding. My understanding, they used to have some type of public education, high school education, but that was cut because due to budgets and so I think we need to me, when you start with the public education, you solve half of your problem, because now people are cognizant of the cost, the way things are being disposed, the way that we need to recycle things, and they get on the program. But if nobody's telling them the ramification, they're gonna continue the same behavior.
It's John Burns, District 1. I was just going to mention too, I think this is good to connect to the discussions that I was having here on the priority area, where there are programs that are moving in this direction that we can support as well. Like for instance, the paint program that's developing. And so it's good to not try and, or I should say, we don't have to do too much work in a vacuum coming up with ideas for these. It was impressive to me how many ideas the county is already sort of pushing forward with this in the recycling program. And so I'm still talking with them and trying to figure out where is the best area that we can provide letters and support to in order for them to move forward with it. But there are good rationale that they have to try and promote this idea, which is just paying up front for items that need waste. And so I think there's a lot of positives that we can help achieve there.
This is Commissioner McIntosh. Just from listening, I think we need to change the way that we're thinking about, rather than trying to institute fees to try and, I guess, prevent people from generating waste, because we're going to generate waste. If I want to buy a computer, I don't want it to arrive in little itty bitty pieces. I want it to be protected. And so, that's waste that has to be disposed of. So you want to look at more at how, you're creating fees to fund disposing of it and looking at how you can, we should be focusing more on how to divert waste from the landfill. And then if that is the purpose, your recycling, your diversion, that's going to cost money as well, which you're trying to keep free as an incentive. So you're going to run into the hole again because you're funding all this stuff, trying to prevent it from going into the dump. You're trying to send it off island because we just don't have the space or the required volume to handle it here on the island. And so those are expensive options for shipping. And I think we need to just modify our thinking and policy and how we're addressing the issues as we move forward. I think that would help a little bit.
I also wonder if this is Elise, if there's a way that we can partner with maybe DOE and even the college here to include them on as part of the problem solving and education piece, where we involve students to start thinking about what they're doing, but also what's the best way to educate others about the issues that we face with waste. And in the process, educating them, but also tasking them with coming up with creative solutions as part of the next generation, and think about what they're doing and what people should be thinking about to take care of our island. And I don't know how the county feels about having a Facebook page or Instagram or TikTok, but there could be lots of avenues that we can advocate through, other than through expensive advertising, which, you know, if that's what it takes, that's what it takes. But maybe there could be other creative solutions that the next generation has.
Yeah, Elise, that's good. And that's the intent is social media now is the way to get to anybody. So our goal is not to do expensive advertising. Our goal is to capture the social media, but we need somebody to run it. So unfortunately, we don't have the staffing, and that's where I'm saying is we need to, everything comes down to funding and staffing. We should have, as a county, we should have a section, at least 2 to 3 staff members that concentrate on tapping into the social media, tapping into the high school, the universities, partner with private and public entities. Yes, that's what I'm talking about. It's not just a matter of going and spend money on advertisement, it's the outreach.
Is it possible so it sounds like it's not possible for a department to have their own social media representative. I'm not sure how that works in the structure of government.
No, it is possible. It's a matter of just finding the fund to hire the staff to do it.
Maybe you could allow Senna Berg, who is kind of your Facebook friend in the recycle group, has been trying very hard to connect up with multiple groups and has worked some with a university college, I forget what level it is. Anyway, a place in Hilo, to deal with getting the word out and leveraging opportunities to communicate. Senna, are you there?
I think she attended a different meeting at 10 o'clock for me. But yeah,
she's still got her computer up.
Yeah, I've been using her, utilizing her for these type of things, and she's only one person, but definitely we try it, and we're gonna continue trying. But the point I'm trying to bring out, it is more of the outreach and education, rather than trying to do something that, because to me that's half of the problem.
I definitely, the SWAC would agree with you there. Like I said, it was education, education, education.
Right.
It's understanding what the impacts are of what you do, the decisions you make and don't make, as well as having alternatives, places to put the stuff. We have
Exactly.
some reuse centers that people can take in trying to communicate that they exist, that what you can take there, some different recycling opportunities, but it's an infrastructure that we are poorly lacking. We don't, as Lee said, we don't have processing capabilities to turn things back into usable materials. And we're on an island, so there may be some statewide or other islands to work with. It's a life cycle management challenge, and so there are lots of moving parts. And one of the things that we recognize is somebody's got to do that base work and keep all the pieces together and juggling all the pieces. And that's what we overload the few people that we have.
And once you have established outreach and education, then the next step when we go out and ask for fees or funding, I think it becomes easier fights politically and will be even accepted easy because now everybody understands it. So, you know, but to go out and say we're gonna set up fees without educating the public, it's gonna be outrageous.
More taxes, yeah.
Yeah, exactly. We're gonna get eggs on our face, that's all I'm saying.
Well, and the model we have on this island is high five. We pay a fee, a nickel, not just a cent, a nickel for every can of soda and drinks and whatnot. And some of us take the time to go get our money back, and a lot of us do not, or we donate the cans to others who could use the money. And it doesn't stop hardly anybody from buying canned and bottled drinks. So I mean, it's like a gasoline tax. You want to reduce consumption, you got to put a pretty big price on things to really affect people. A penny, a nickel, a dime. I don't think it'll make that much of a difference.
A good example, I remember going to, when I was in college, I'm giving my age away, but I remember these cigarette packs. I never smoked, but I remember these cigarette packs used to be in a machine. You put at 25 cents, you get a pack of cigarettes. I don't know if you guys recall that back in the 80s. Now a pack of cigarettes costs $10 and people still buy it. So, and the whole intent was to prevent people from buying it and smoking it. But yeah, the human behavior is very challenging, and that's what we need to target.
Thoughts from others? Like I said, John and I figure this conversation is going to continue for quite some time, but and I also put the chapter 10 of the solid waste management plan in there, where we kind of focused mostly on funding, although there's other stuff in there.
John here.
Yeah, John?
Yeah, I mean, the kickoff funding, like with the bottle bill, that's where we always come back to the money. And we have to have a source, a guaranteed source. And if we start, you know, with as the example, the bottle bill, you start with a nickel, start with a penny, start with any sum of money, and use that to build the infrastructure that it's going to take to make the solid waste stream self-funding. It should not be on the property tax. What is there? I mean, 1920 is gone. You know, there's no longer a correlation, particularly with the fact that we are totally dependent upon, at this point, the visitor industry. You and I and everyone connected to this call have all traveled. You buy an immense amount of stuff that never makes it home. It is as far as I can tell, and in the discussions that I've had with people that have been involved in this a long time, it's the only thing as a starting point that makes sense. Thank you.
Well, I raised earlier, again, this is Georgine, do we look at the TAT? And I see Tim Richards' face on the call. I don't know if he's there, but looking at that as a revenue source, and how far to push it and how much we could use some money, how much money, Ramsey, you even need. I know you've got a budget of X amount. I don't know, it's $28, what, $1 million that I said, what you need. How many pennies would we have to charge on the goods that get purchased here? I don't know what the total expenditure is on items bought on this island. We could only, as I understand it, the max we would get from the TAT would be 19 million. Drop in a bucket. So I don't know. I know the volume of need and where to get it. I think it's got to be a whole package of ideas. We're not going to find a single solution.
Well,
John, again,
definitely,
I-
the money is driven, the cost is driven by the service we provide. And it depends, you know, if you want a 7-day service versus 1-day collection service. I mean, think about it. You know, we have transfer station that's operated 7 days. And the reason it's operated 7 days because of convenience to the users. But if you look at it from a collection point of view, you only get your waste collected once a week. So if we could get the human to rethink that, okay, on this day, I'm gonna go utilize a transfer station rather than just keeping it convenient when I feel like going to the transfer station, that could save a lot of money because they're not paying. But we need to start setting a fee for that convenience, for the beneficial use of a landfill, because everybody ends up using this landfill. Every waste comes from every house, end up being at the landfill. So, and I think, you know, we could manage with what we got, but the level of service is going to drop, and people need to acclimate to the change if they don't want to see fees going on their taxes or fees collected on the tax bill. So, you know, it depends. We want, but yet that comes at a cost.
Yeah, well, I mean, John, again, I mean, I've been here long enough that I remember when the transfer station was a hole in the ground and there was no gate. That for good or ill, that's our history. And the expectation that the transfer station is going to be available the fact that we have a gate and hours and we got that far is quite surprising to me. It initially got a lot of blowback. So, and the complexity of the waste stream, it used to be that what you threw in there would quietly decompose and it had relatively little impact. And that is not the world we live in today. So reducing the hours is going to be problematic at best. I mean, we've thought about this for a while, and that's all I can say about that.
But think about it, John, if you go to collection, look at anywhere in the country, even on Oahu, they pick it up every Thursday.
Oh,
So
I'm not
that-
arguing about collection. No, I mean, if we can get a collection thing going, that would be a big start.
Yeah, and that is, and we need to start thinking about, okay, if we as a human accept collection once a week, why cannot we just take our garbage to a transfer station once a week on that particular?
It's a built-in mindset.
Well, that's.
I mean,
at a
yeah,
cost.
I mean, to think, I'm not arguing with you if you could just get the rest of the world to believe it, right? I totally agree with you. But the reality of where we are is that it is ingrained in people that the transfer station is available 24/7. If you, and I agree that curbside pickup, at least in the small lot subdivisions, are something that is entirely possible. Where we're going to have a problem is in the large acreage subdivisions. That's where the rub's going to come.
Yeah, and I think that's where the challenge, you're right, it's the mindset, how are we gonna, but you see, because nobody's paying for it, so it becomes entitlement. Just like, you know, when you go to the 7-Eleven, it's open 24/7, but anything you purchase, you buy, you pay for it. So the idea.
Oh, of course, yeah.
Here, we need to do the public education and the outreach and start changing that mindset, because it's going to come at a cost.
Well, and again,
It
getting
goes
back to
kind of-
this minimal disposal fee, you get it settled with people that they are in fact paying for, and it is not arbitrary. I mean, the fact that you can go to the transfer station and dump a truckload or one bag full, and on their side of the fence, it doesn't seem to have a consequence. You and I both know that there's a huge consequence because they don't see the cost.
I do want to acknowledge, or at least I was told by Peter Sir, that you needed to take off, Ramsey, for a meeting at 11:30.
Yeah, I got a cabinet meeting, but definitely my brain is already fried. So by the time I get to the mayor's meeting, I'll probably just.
Well, we are not done with this conversation. We will, like I said, this was kind of a kickoff to start thinking about what are the different ways and means, and also to recognize that we aren't the only place on the planet that's looking at how to manage solid waste. There are lots of models out there, other organizations. Maine is going to try something to get the manufacturers to pay. I just keep thinking of all those times I go up on a website and I want to buy something. They say, oh, no delivery to Alaska or Hawaii. Well, how long is that list going to get, depending on how much we're going to charge them to figure out how to pay for waste disposal off of this island? So I think the logistic challenges are quite numerous. There's no magic solution. From the SWAC we spent on 2 years banging away at it, there's no magic solution, honest. It's a whole pile of things. We tried to collate ideas we thought were useful. As a committee, compromises were made, not always the answers that I would have selected, but I think we've got some progress. We've got to figure out how we can staff more, either to actually do some of the community communication education programs, but also to just analyze what would work on this island. What could we pilot to see how to make it work? How much would we need to charge for each kind of good? Throwing away a computer, which hopefully you never have to do, versus throwing away a paper cup is not the same 1 cent cost. So do we differentiate by the type of product? And how do we set up an administration for it when it's a county fee or tax? I don't know. It boggles my brain. But
Well, definitely.
we need to understand better, how much is it really costing us and what's the best way to do it?
I think you've done a great job with your presentation. Shout out to you. It's great presentation, and I think it's very complex topic, and we're going to continue talking about it. I just want to shout out to Sina because she's really been great help to us as a department, as a county. So we're going to continue working with her and navigating the wastewater issues. And I need to run for my next meeting. Aloha.
I
Thank you.
appreciate it very much.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
So, do you want to go back, cogitate on it, and then we'll bring it back for the next meeting's agenda as well? Maybe focus in on a couple of areas to explore. I mean, again, what Maine is trying to do, which they haven't done yet, they're trying to set it up. How that will work or not work may or may not be a model that would work for this. I mean, the concept is basically manufacturers fund our solid waste management program. Yeah, I'm not so sure about that. But
Well,
it's worth looking at. And the idea of, do we do something with the transfer stations and how they do? I know John Burns was interested in looking further at how do we make that a more efficient operation, and whether or not it's going to these single days. I mean, don't go to a transfer station on a Saturday. Holy moly, you can't get in. There's this huge line.
Right.
So, divvy it up. Like, if your house number is odd, you get to go on Wednesday, whatever. So there are different kinds of programs to deal with all the different issues that we've got. I'm dying to see what's going to come back from the life cycle analysis on how we handle our recyclables. Can we do more of it? Is there stuff we should stop doing? So there are a multitude of opportunities to look at how do we divert waste? How do we fund what we got to do? Because Lee, you're right. We will always have waste. Second law of thermodynamics, we will always have waste. So how are we going to manage it at the most cost effectively possible? So think about it, throw me ideas. If there's something you want to discuss for our future agenda items, which is the next agenda item for today, number 8, that you want to discuss specifically, maybe I can line up either George Hidesco or Sana to talk about the education programs that we have had, which have been directed primarily toward how can you recycle the stuff you have, reduce, reuse, recycle, hit the pyramid down correctly. They've been doing bits and pieces of it as they can in their spare time. And so I think that could be very informative for us. But if you have some other specifics you'd like to talk about, another program for EPR, I think we'll try and see if we can get Representative Lowen. Is she a representative or senator? I forget. Anyway,
Representative.
What?
Representative.
Representative, okay. To present some of the legislative approaches she's been looking at. So just send me ideas. Are there other topic areas that you would like to tee up for next meeting's agenda?
I would just like to throw out one other thing before we leave this.
Sure.
That is the containers go back empty.
You say that. I tried to, does anybody have a contact with Matson? I'd like to just verify that. They're in the business to make money, and an empty container moving doesn't make money. So
if they could find something to put, if they could find something to put in it that would pay, they would be more than happy to deal with it.
Oh, we'd have to pay for it. They're not a nonprofit.
Yeah, right. Yeah, I mean, that's just, I'm just reminding everybody that the majority of those containers go back empty.
Do you have data to support that? Do you have somebody who knows that?
Other than watching them load the empty containers down at the dock?
You open the doors and see that they're empty?
Yeah, well, I mean, you see that that when they close the door, there's nothing inside, and they load it up and it's gone.
Okay, well, I'd be interested. I tried once and I didn't get any distance to find somebody who would know that end of the logistics. It sounds like an
Yeah,
easy
that's,
problem, but I don't think it is an easy solution.
well, you see, the thing is that it's, having gone down this road a little bit and talked with some people unofficially, obviously, if you have something to put in the container, they are going to want to monetize that to the best they can. That's their business. Just keep that in the back of your mind.
No, a heavy container costs money to ship. You've got to pay
Yes.
for the extra fuel. So there are many considerations for it. It's just not an
Yeah.
area I'm familiar with. And
Yeah.
I appreciate anybody who has some contacts into Matson or Pasha. Anyway, other topics that you want to get on the agenda that you're maybe, Rick, you've been doing some investigation, you got some more things to present and actually get some action from us, let me know. And I will get it up there. I don't know that we're ready to have, for example, the Maui decision or the latest version of the Maui decision presented to us and what that means. I think there's still things to develop further, but stuff like that. Any other comments? Questions, suggestions? Corporate counsel, you haven't been showing your face. Are you crying on what we've been talking about?
Hi, Georgine. No, I need to stand and sit alternately. I can't stay in one position.
Oh, you're good. Yes, and I'm terrible. And I noticed people ran off and went to the bathroom again, and that's fine. Peter does fantastic minutes, so you'll be able to catch every minute you might have missed. At any rate, I think I'm talked out and would entertain a motion to adjourn. Elise?
I move we adjourn the meeting.
Have a second?
Second.
Second from D.
That was about 4 seconds, so I will take it. Everybody say aye and aloha.
Aye. Thank you.
Hi.
Hi.
Aloha.
Thank you, everyone.
Aloha, Chair and Ramsey and all that participated. Bye-bye.
Bye, everyone.